They say people at the top stay there because they've earned it, because they're untouchable. For 3 years, one woman proved that theory right. Her name doesn't matter yet, but what she built does. She wasn't a politician or a celebrity. She didn't run a corporation or inherit a fortune. But in the wealthiest neighborhood of Atlanta, Georgia, along Peachtree Road where old money whispers and new money shouts, she controlled everything that mattered. Reputations, careers, lives. One word from her could close a business. One glance could end a friendship. And for 3 years, no one dared to question her. Until October 14th. Inside Lumiere, the kind of restaurant where reservations take 6 months and a single entree costs more than most people's weekly groceries, something happened that no one saw coming. A 24-year-old waitress from rural Mississippi, a girl who'd never even seen the inside of a place like that until 2 weeks prior, walked up to the most feared woman in Buckhead and did something that shattered an illusion an entire community had been too terrified to examine. What happened next didn't just change 2 lives. It exposed a truth that had been hiding in plain sight all along. This is that story. Hello friends, welcome to our story. Before we dive deeper, please like this video and subscribe. We'd also love to know in the comments where you're watching from. It's truly amazing knowing our stories are connecting with viewers across the world. Before we get to that night, you need to understand what Buckhead really is. It's not just a neighborhood in Atlanta. It's a world unto itself. Where Piedmont Road meets Peachtree, where the high-rises cast shadows over boutiques that don't display price tags because if you have to ask, you don't belong. This is where Georgia's elite send their children to private schools that cost more than state university tuition, where charity galas raise millions in a single evening, and where silence is more valuable than honesty. The woman at the center of this story wasn't born into that world, but she'd learned how to navigate it better than anyone. She was engaged to one of the most successful real estate developers in the Southeast, a man whose portfolio included half the luxury condos between Midtown and Sandy Springs. His name was associated with progress, philanthropy, generosity. Hers was associated with perfection. They were photographed at every major event. Their engagement announcement made the Atlanta Journal-Constitution Society pages. But here's what no one talked about. Why did people who worked closely with her suddenly leave Atlanta without explanation? Why did a renowned chef at one of Buckhead's finest establishments abruptly relocate to Charleston? Why did her fiancé's assistant of 7 years quietly transfer to the Houston office with no farewell party, no goodbye email, nothing? And why did the man himself, this confident, successful developer, always look like he was holding his breath around her? What was everyone too afraid to ask? And what did a girl from a town of 3,000 people see that an entire city full of sophisticated, educated, powerful individuals chose to ignore? Her name was Maya Johnson. She was 24 years old. Born and raised in Tupelo, Mississippi, a town where everybody knew everybody, where Friday night football games were the social event of the week, and where her grandmother ran a small diner on Main Street that served the best pecan pie in Lee County. Maya grew up in that diner. After school, she'd do her homework at the corner booth while her grandmother worked the counter, greeting regulars by name, remembering how they took their coffee, asking about their families. Her grandmother taught her that serving people wasn't about subservience. It was about dignity. Yours and theirs. When Maya was 22, her grandmother passed away suddenly. Heart attack, no warning. One Tuesday morning, she was flipping pancakes, and by Tuesday evening, she was gone. Maya inherited the diner, but the building needed repairs she couldn't afford, and the debt was overwhelming. She sold it to a local family, packed everything she owned into her grandmother's old Toyota, and drove 8 hours east to Atlanta with $900 and a promise she'd made at the funeral. Her grandmother's last words to her, whispered in the hospital before the final stroke, were simple. "Baby, don't ever let anyone make you small." Maya arrived in Atlanta on a Sunday in August. The heat was suffocating, the traffic was terrifying, and her first apartment was a studio in East Atlanta Village that smelled like mildew and had bars on the windows. For 6 weeks, she applied everywhere: coffee shops, retail stores, hotels, restaurants. She was overqualified for some positions, underqualified for others, too inexperienced, too rural, not the right fit. Her savings dwindled. By late September, she had $200 left and 1 week until rent was due. That's when she saw the Help Wanted sign outside Lumiere on Peachtree Road. She'd walked past it a dozen times, never imagining she'd be able to work somewhere like that. But desperation makes you brave. She walked in during the lunch shift, asked for the manager, and met Laurent Beaumont, the head chef who'd trained in Lyon and ran his kitchen like a military operation. He looked at her application with obvious skepticism. "You've never worked fine dining?" "No, sir. You understand what we do here?" "I understand you serve people who expect excellence, and I know how to deliver that." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "1 week trial. You mess up, you're gone. No second chances. Understood." Maya put on the black uniform, tied her hair back, and stepped into a world she barely recognized. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, wine lists thicker than textbooks, clients who spent more on one meal than she used to make in a month at her grandmother's diner. But she learned fast. She watched the senior staff, memorized the menu, practiced carrying trays until her arms ached. By her second week, she'd stopped dropping silverware and started reading tables, anticipating needs before clients voiced them. She was good at this. And she had no idea that being good at her job was about to put her on a collision course with someone who believed being feared was better than being respected. It was Maya's third week at Lumiere. She'd learned the unspoken hierarchy of the place, the rhythm of service, the particular preferences of the regular clients. Table 12 always wanted sparkling water with extra lime. Table 5 never looked at the dessert menu but always ordered it when suggested. Table 9 tipped 20% exactly, never more, never less. And then there was Table 7. The corner booth with the view of Peachtree Street, positioned perfectly for privacy but visible enough to be seen. That was her table, the woman everyone whispered about. Maya first heard her name from Rachel, a server who'd been at Lumiere for 3 years. She pulled Maya aside one evening before the dinner shift, her voice low and urgent. "Listen carefully. If you see a woman in all white with a diamond ring the size of a quarter, that's her. Her fiancé usually comes with her. Do not speak unless she addresses you directly. Do not make suggestions. Do not ask questions. Just bring what she orders, stay invisible. And for the love of God, do not make mistakes." Maya frowned. "What happens if I do?" Rachel's face went pale. "Last server who got her order wrong was fired within an hour. And I heard she made sure he couldn't get hired anywhere in Buckhead after that. She has connections everywhere." Maya wanted to ask more, but Rachel walked away quickly, as if even talking about her too long was dangerous. That night, she arrived. Maya was refilling water glasses near the entrance when the entire restaurant seemed to shift. Conversations quieted. Staff straightened their posture. Even Laurent emerged from the kitchen, a courtesy he extended to almost no one. She walked in wearing a white silk dress that probably cost more than Maya's car, her dark hair pulled back in a flawless bun, diamonds glinting at her neck and wrist. Beside her was a man in his early 40s, tall, handsome, expensively dressed, with the kind of tired eyes that come from not sleeping well for a very long time. They were seated at table 7. Maya wasn't assigned to their section, but she watched from across the room as their server, an older woman named Diane, approached with visible nervousness. She saw the woman snap her fingers twice without looking up from her phone. Saw Diane practically sprint to fulfill a request. Saw the man, the fiancé, sit with his hands folded in his lap, saying nothing, his jaw tight. Maya had seen that posture before, in her own reflection, years ago, when she was 17 and dating a boy from Tupelo High who had a smile that charmed everyone and a temper that only she saw. She recognized the stillness that comes from trying not to provoke someone, the careful monitoring of tone, of word choice, of breathing. 2 hours into the shift, Diane approached Maya near the service station, her hands shaking slightly. "Can you take table 7 for a moment? I need a break." Maya hesitated. "Are you sure?" "I was told not to. Please, just for 5 minutes. I just need 5 minutes." Maya nodded and picked up a water pitcher. She approached table 7 carefully, professionally, keeping her face neutral. The woman was speaking in a low, sharp tone to her fiancé. "Honestly, if you can't even close a deal with the Hartwell Group, maybe I should start attending these meetings myself. Clearly you need someone competent involved." The man said nothing. His hand gripped his water glass so tightly his knuckles were white. Maya refilled his glass first, then moved to the woman's side of the table. As she poured, the woman glanced up, eyes cold, This water is warm. I asked for ice cold. Do you not understand basic instructions? Maya paused. She checked the pitcher. The ice was still floating in it, condensation dripping down the sides. The water had been chilled less than 3 minutes ago. She could have apologized, could have nodded, retreated, brought a fresh pitcher just to appease her. But she heard her grandmother's voice, clear as if she were standing right beside her. Don't ever let anyone make you small. Maya set the pitcher down gently and met the woman's gaze directly. The water is ice cold, ma'am. It was chilled 3 minutes ago. But if you'd prefer, I'm happy to bring you a fresh glass. The entire restaurant seemed to freeze. The woman's eyes widened, her mouth opening slightly in shock. No one had ever corrected her. Not here, not anywhere. Her voice rose, sharp and venomous. Excuse me? Did you just argue with me? Maya kept her tone calm, respectful, but firm. I'm not arguing. I'm letting you know the water is already cold. But I'll bring you another glass if that's what you'd like. The silence was deafening. Across the table, the man looked up, his tired eyes suddenly alert, staring at Maya as if seeing something he'd forgotten existed. Now, before we see what happens next, let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a moment like this, where you had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your dignity? Where staying silent felt safer but speaking up felt necessary? Drop a comment and tell me what you would have done in Maya's position. Would you have apologized just to keep your job, or would you have stood your ground like she did? And if you're still watching, type "I'm here" in the comments so I know you're following this story to the end, because what happens next is going to shock you. The woman stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. The sound echoed through the silent restaurant. What is your name? Maya kept her voice steady. Maya Johnson. Well, Maya Johnson, you just made the biggest mistake of your pathetic little life. She turned sharply and walked toward the back of the restaurant, toward Laurent's office. Maya watched her go, her heart pounding but her hands surprisingly steady. She'd expected fear, but what she felt instead was clarity. She'd told the truth. She hadn't been rude. She hadn't been insubordinate. She'd simply refused to accept a lie. Within 3 minutes, Laurent appeared at the dining room entrance and gestured for Maya to follow him. The walk to his office felt longer than it was. When she entered, the woman was already there, arms crossed, standing beside Laurent's desk like she owned it. Laurent looked at Maya with something that might have been disappointment or might have been resignation. Maya, Miss Ashford has requested your immediate termination. Maya nodded slowly. No tears, no pleading, just quiet acceptance. I understand. The woman, Miss Ashford, smiled with cold satisfaction. Good. And don't bother applying anywhere else in Buckhead. I'll personally make sure every establishment knows exactly what kind of employee you are. Maya turned toward the door, her hand reaching for the handle. But before she could open it, a voice stopped her. A male voice, firm and clear. No. Everyone turned. Standing in the doorway was the man from Table 7, Miss Ashford's fiancé. His face was no longer passive. His jaw was set, his posture straight, and for the first time that evening, his eyes looked fully awake. Miss Ashford's expression shifted from triumph to confusion. Excuse me? He stepped into the office, his gaze moving from Maya to Miss Ashford. She stays. Miss Ashford's voice dropped to a dangerous tone. Marcus, we're leaving. Now. The man, Marcus, shook his head slowly. No, we're not. And actually, I'm done. The engagement is off. The room went completely still. Miss Ashford stared at him as if he'd just spoken a foreign language. What did you just say? Marcus reached into his pocket, pulled off the platinum band from his finger, and set it gently on Laurent's desk. I said I'm done, Vanessa. I've been done for a long time. I just didn't have the courage to admit it until tonight. Vanessa's face cycled through shock, rage, and something that looked almost like panic. You can't be serious. Do you have any idea what I've sacrificed for you? What I've built for us? Marcus looked at her with sad, exhausted eyes. You built a cage, Vanessa, and I'm walking out of it. He turned to Maya, and for the first time he smiled, a real smile. I'm sorry for not saying something sooner, for letting it go on this long. Thank you for reminding me what honesty looks like. Then he walked out of the office, leaving Vanessa standing frozen, her carefully constructed world crumbling in a matter of seconds. Laurent cleared his throat awkwardly. Miss Johnson, you're not fired. In fact, take the rest of the night off. Paid. Maya nodded, still processing what had just happened, and quietly left the office. Behind her, she heard Vanessa's voice, shrill and breaking. This isn't over, but somehow Maya knew it was. The next morning, Maya woke up in her small apartment in East Atlanta Village expecting everything to feel different. But the mildew smell was still there. The bars on the windows were still there. Her phone, sitting on the nightstand, was buzzing nonstop. She picked it up and saw dozens of missed calls, text messages from numbers she didn't recognize, and notifications from social media apps she barely used. Someone had recorded the confrontation at Lumiere. Not the full conversation, but enough. A 20-second video of Maya standing calmly at table 7, speaking to Vanessa Ashford with quiet dignity, while Vanessa's voice rose in anger. The video had been posted by another diner, someone sitting 3 tables away with a clear view of the entire thing. By morning, it had 2 million views. The comments were overwhelming. This is the kind of courage we need more of. Maya sat down cautiously. Why am I here? Marcus slid a folder across the table. I want to do something I should have done years ago. I want to help people like you, people who've been silenced, overlooked, or punished for doing the right thing. Maya opened the folder. Inside was a legal document establishing a foundation. The name at the top read, the Maya Johnson Foundation for Service Industry Workers. Her hands froze. What is this? Marcus leaned forward. It's a fund, $1.2 million to start. It'll provide legal support, financial assistance, and job placement resources for workers in the service industry who face harassment, discrimination, or wrongful termination. You inspired it, and if you're willing, I'd like you to help run it. Maya stared at the document, unable to speak. There was more. Another set of papers, a property deed for a small building on Edgewood Avenue. Marcus had purchased it outright and wanted to turn it into a community center, a safe space where service workers could access resources, take classes, find mentorship, and he wanted Maya to be the director. Why? Maya finally asked, her voice barely a whisper. Why would you do this? Marcus looked out the window at the city below. Because you gave me something I'd lost. You reminded me what courage looks like, and I want to spend the rest of my life making sure other people find theirs too. Maya covered her face with her hands, tears streaming down her cheeks. She'd come to Atlanta with nothing, and now she had everything her grandmother had ever wanted for her. Not money, not status, but purpose. 6 months later, Maya walked back through the doors of Lumiere, not in a black uniform with her hair tied back and her head down. This time she wore a simple navy dress her grandmother would have loved, her hair loose around her shoulders, and she walked with the kind of confidence that doesn't announce itself but doesn't apologize either. Laurent greeted her at the entrance with a warm smile and a handshake that felt more like a welcome home than a business courtesy. The staff, the ones who'd watched her stand up to Vanessa that October night, applauded as she passed. Rachel hugged her tightly and whispered, "You changed everything here. Thank you." Maya was seated at table 7, the same corner booth where everything had shifted, where a 24-year-old girl from Tupelo, Mississippi, had chosen dignity over safety and unknowingly set a dozen lives on a different path. She ordered the roasted chicken her grandmother used to make on Sundays, and when it arrived, she closed her eyes and said a quiet thank you to the woman who'd taught her that serving people was never about being small. Across town, in a luxury penthouse on Peachtree Road, Vanessa Ashford sat alone at a marble dining table built for 12. Her phone lay face down beside an untouched plate of food. She'd stopped checking social media weeks ago. Every post, every comment, every mention of her name was a reminder of how quickly power evaporates when it's built on fear instead of respect. She still had money. She still had her looks. She still had a closet full of designer clothes and a calendar that used to be filled with exclusive invitations. But none of it mattered anymore, because the one thing she'd lost, the thing she didn't know how to buy or manipulate or demand back, was people. No one called, no one visited. The galas she used to dominate went on without her. The social circles she'd controlled had quietly closed ranks and moved forward as if she'd never existed. She'd built an empire on making others feel small, and the moment someone refused to shrink, the entire illusion collapsed. Meanwhile, at the community center on Edgewood Avenue, Maya stood in front of 30 people. mostly young women and men who worked in hotels, restaurants, retail shops, and coffee houses across Atlanta. She was teaching a workshop on workplace rights, on how to recognize harassment, on how to document mistreatment, and most importantly, on how to stand up for yourself without losing who you are. One young woman in the back raised her hand. What if standing up means losing everything? What if you can't afford to speak up? Maya thought about that question for a moment, then smiled gently. I used to think courage meant not being afraid. But that's not what it is. Courage is being terrified and doing it anyway because staying silent costs more than speaking up. You might lose a job, but you won't lose yourself. And that's the one thing no one can take unless you let them. The room was quiet, and then someone started clapping, then another, then the whole room. After the session, Marcus arrived with lunch for the staff and volunteers. He'd kept his word. He'd donated millions to worker protection initiatives, lobbied for policy changes in Georgia's labor laws, and become one of the most vocal advocates for service industry reform in the Southeast. He and Maya weren't romantic. That wasn't the story here. They were partners in something bigger, two people who'd found their voices at the same moment and decided to use them to lift others. As Maya locked up the center that evening, she stood on the sidewalk and looked up at the Atlanta skyline. Somewhere out there, her grandmother was smiling, because Maya had kept her promise. She hadn't let anyone make her small, and in refusing to shrink, she'd created space for dozens of others to finally stand tall. So let me ask you something. What would you have done in Maya's position? Would you have stayed silent to keep the job? Or would you have chosen your dignity over your paycheck? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to hear your story because I know some of you have been in that exact moment. And if this story moved you, hit that subscribe button because next week I'm bringing you another true story about a janitor who walked into a corporate boardroom and exposed a secret that brought down an entire company. You won't believe how it ends. Remember what Maya proved that night. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply tell the truth, even when your hands are shaking, even when the whole room is watching. I'll see you in the next one.